So you're in the middle of a workout, or maybe you're doing some physical therapy, and the instructor yells over the upbeat music. They say, engage your core.
Oh, yeah. Use your deep muscles. It's like everywhere.
Right. So you instinctively tense your stomach, you hold your breath a little bit, and you just sort of hope you're doing it right.
Which is what everyone does, yeah.
But physiologically speaking,
Mm.
that advice, that direct command to just, use your deep muscles is actually physically impossible to follow.
It really is. I mean, it is arguably the most common instruction in the entire fitness and movement world, and yet we're basically setting people up for a task their nervous system just isn't wired to execute in that way.
And that's exactly the massive paradigm shift we are looking at today. So this deep dive, we have a really fascinating set of research notes titled, Deep Muscles Are Not Something You Use. They emerge when the right environment exists.
It's a great title. Very revealing.
Yeah, it sets it up perfectly. Because our mission today is to completely upend your perspective on body control. We are just throwing out the idea of forcing specific muscles to work.
Right, no more forcing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Instead, we're exploring how to create this internal environment where your body effortlessly organizes itself. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because right out of the gate, we really need to dismantle this premise that we have conscious control over our deep muscular anatomy.
Yeah, the instruction to just simply use them assumes this level of direct, conscious access that human beings just do not possess.
Right.
Now, to be clear, we do need to understand the biological hardware here. It's not that your deep muscles are like completely numb or dead to the world.
They're not just inert blocks in there.
Exactly. They are actually heavily populated with sensory receptors. We have these things called muscle spindles, which are essentially microscopic stretch detectors woven right into the muscle fibers. They're constantly monitoring changes in length. Yeah, and we have Golgi tendon organs, which sit at the junction where the muscle meets the bone, and they act like these tiny built-in tension sensors to measure the load your muscles are carrying.
So there's a lot of data being collected.
A massive amount. And we have this entire web of mechanoreceptors scattered throughout the connective tissue and the fascia, just acting like tiny pressure gauges.
So the hardware for sensation is absolutely there. It's continuously gathering data. But the crucial difference is how our brain actually translates that data, right? Compared to like a superficial muscle.
That is the key difference, yes.
Because, I mean, when I do a heavy bicep curl, I get immediate localized feedback. I feel the bicep bulging. The sensation is very clearly I am actively contracting this specific muscle.
Right, it's a very loud local signal.
But with the deep structural muscles of the spine or the pelvis, the brain doesn't grant us that same localized mechanical feedback. To me, it's very similar to trying to consciously control your digestion, or your heart rate.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
Because you can't just sit there after lunch and issue a direct command to your organs. You can't say, okay, stomach, release 30% more acid, or intestines, begin peristalsis now.
Exactly. The autonomic nervous system keeps those processes behind a firewall, so to speak.
Right, the firewall.
You just eat the food, and your body handles the incredibly complex coordination entirely behind the scenes. And it's the same with deep muscles. You do not perceive the localized mechanical action of the fibers contracting. You perceive the global outcome of their activity.
The global outcome. Okay, so what does it actually feel like then?
Well, when those deep muscles are doing their job correctly, what you actually experience is structural support. You feel this effortless stability. You might notice that your breathing is suddenly freer, or you simply possess this integrated, connected feeling throughout your whole body.
Which leads to a really wild realization. Because we don't feel a targeted burning flex, we have to entirely rethink what proper engagement actually feels like.
We really do.
And counterintuitively, the research indicates that when deep muscular support actually improves, people paradoxically report feeling like everything just relaxed.
I know. It sounds like a total contradiction on the surface. Because engaging your support system should feel like work, not relaxation.
Right. If I'm supported, I should be flexing.
But if we look at the physiological chain reaction, the sensation of relaxation makes perfect sense. When your deep support system improves, your skeleton becomes efficiently supported from the inside out.
I like to think of it less like scaffolding propping up a building from the outside and more like a suspension bridge.
Oh, a suspension bridge. I like that.
Yeah, because in a suspension bridge, the structure stands effortlessly when the deep internal tension of the main cables is perfectly balanced.
That is a fantastic way to visualize it. That internal structural balance, that tensegrity, as we call it, takes the immense forces of gravity and movement and distributes them perfectly through the bones and deep tissues.
Like the cables on the bridge taking the weight.
Exactly. And because the skeleton is now properly supported by those deep, efficient cables, your large superficial muscles suddenly realize they don't need to maintain excessive protective activity.
I can finally take a break.
Right. The heavy lifting superficial muscles that have been working overtime just to keep you upright can finally clock out. That unnecessary tension just vanishes.
Wow.
So the sensation of relaxation isn't the deep muscle slacking off. It's the superficial movement muscles finally getting permission to let go because the deep stabilizing system took over the load.
Okay, wait, I have to push back here for a second.
Sure, go ahead.
Because we're saying the nervous system organizes around functional goals, right?
Right.
It doesn't tell the body, activate the transverse abdominis. It just says, stand up or balance or reach for that coffee cup, and it automatically recruits the right muscles for the job.
Yes, the nervous system is heavily goal-oriented. It's constantly calculating solutions within the motor system rather than fixating on single anatomical targets.
But, and here's my issue with this, if the nervous system is this brilliant supercomputer automatically solving the problem of standing up, why do I have back pain sitting at my desk right now? I mean, why do so many of us have terrible posture? If it's an automatic solution, why is my nervous system grabbing the wrong cables and making my superficial lower back muscles do all the work? Why doesn't the body just naturally default to the optimal solution every time?
What's fascinating here is understanding the actual limitations of that supercomputer. The nervous system is a master problem solver, yes, but it can only solve the problem using whatever environment is currently available to it at that exact millisecond.
Wait, what do you mean by whatever environment is available?
Well, your nervous system's primary non-negotiable goal in that moment is simply to keep you from falling out of your desk chair while you stare at your screen.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
If your internal environment is poor, say if your skeletal alignment is pitched way forward, if your center of gravity is off, or if you're unconsciously holding your breath, the nervous system still has to achieve the goal of keeping you upright.
I see. So the goal is met, but it's forced to use a terrible, inefficient solution because I haven't given it the right physical conditions to use the good tools.
Exactly. If the deep, efficient structural pathways are physically unavailable due to how you've organized your posture or your breathing, the nervous system grabs whatever superficial muscles it can to prevent you from falling.
It just panics and grabs whatever is closest.
Right. It will sacrifice efficiency for survival every single time. And that is the origin of the back pain. You're forcing movement-based muscles to perform a long-term stabilizing job they were never designed for.
So the deep muscles are always the optimal solution, but they will only be automatically selected by the brain if the physical conditions are right.
Perfect.
This means if we can't manually force the deep muscles to flex, and the nervous system is just, ruthlessly practical about using whatever environment we give it, then our only real job is to organize that internal environment.
That is the core paradigm shift in this entire approach to body control. The goal is no longer use your muscles. The overarching objective is to cultivate the specific conditions where your nervous system naturally prefers deep muscular organization over superficial bracing.
And the sources give us very concrete factors for what makes up that environment.
Yes, they do.
We're talking about optimizing your skeletal alignment, finding your true center of gravity, regulating your breathing patterns, balancing how your hips are supporting your pelvis, and really just managing the overall tension across your entire body.
It's a holistic setup.
Right. And when those environmental variables line up, the efficient muscular strategies don't need a conscious command. They just emerge on their own.
And to help create those exact conditions, we have to move away from mechanical commands and look at mental imagery.
Mental imagery.
Yeah. The research highlights that spatial imagery is vastly more effective than isolated muscular commands.
Give me an example of that.
So we see examples like imagining being gently drawn inward from the hip joints toward the spine, or visualizing the lower abdomen softly gathering to the center of the body, or even picturing the whole body unifying around this internal central axis.
Okay, but I'm trying to picture doing this in a busy gym. If I imagine my lower abdomen softly gathering to the center, I'm not actually flexing my abs, right?
No, you're not mechanically flexing them.
So how does simply thinking a spatial thought or visualizing an image result in physical, structural support without me manually turning the muscle on?
It's because mental imagery functions entirely differently than a mechanical override.
Mm.
When you visualize these specific spatial relationships, you are communicating directly with the brain's premotor
The
cortex.
premotor cortex.
Yes, you're presenting your nervous system with a desired organizational state. You're handing the supercomputer an architectural blueprint of the outcome you want, rather than trying to micromanage the individual construction
Oh,
workers.
I love that. It's like showing the brain the completed picture on the front of the puzzle box rather than just handing it a single puzzle piece and telling it where to put it.
Exactly. And once the nervous system understands that overarching spatial blueprint, it possesses the immense subconscious processing power to figure out exactly which complex combination of thousands of deep muscle fibers need to fire to create that reality in the physical world.
So the coordination just happens.
The highly nuanced coordination emerges automatically from the image. Trying to mechanically contract the muscle, by contrast, usually just results in a localized, rigid block of dysfunctional tension.
But there is a catch here, right?
There's always a catch.
Because you can't just visualize a beautiful central axis once in the morning while you're drinking your coffee and then expect to be structurally sound for the rest of the day.
No, definitely not.
The human body is in a state of constant flux. You take a breath, you shift your weight, you get tired. The internal environment is instantly different. Which brings us to a concept that sounds like a complete oxymoron to me.
Mm.
The idea that doing nothing is actually an active, vital skill.
It is perhaps the most demanding skill in this entire model. Creating that internal environment through imagery is merely the setup. Because the environment constantly changes, there must be continuous observation.
You have to keep paying attention.
Right. After every single postural adjustment, you have to observe the system. Without observation, it's impossible to know whether the physical organization actually improved or if you just layered on more tension while trying to fix yourself.
And this is where that active doing nothing comes into play. Because doing nothing in this context absolutely does not mean collapsing into a puddle on the floor.
No, not at all.
It doesn't mean sleepy passive relaxation. It means maintaining the absolute minimum necessary internal organization to stay upright and actively stopping all unnecessary intervention.
You literally have to get out of your own way to let the nervous system run the program.
Which is so hard to do. So what does this all mean for us practically? Because doing that without accidentally creating new anxiety or tension is incredibly difficult.
Oh, it's extremely difficult. Attempting to consciously monitor every aspect of your body's organization all at once. Checking your posture, your breathing, your foot placement, that usually overwhelms the brain and just generates a whole new web of defensive tension.
So how do we bypass that trap?
To bypass this neurological trap, practitioners utilize something called anchors.
Right, anchors. They're described as minimal internal reference points. So they aren't anatomical contractions. They are subjective, experiential focal points.
Exactly.
Things like feeling a subtle sensation behind the eyes, or deep within the throat, or, and this is a good one, deep in the lower abdomen, right behind the navel. Actually, let's bring this into the living room right now for a second.
Let's do it.
If you are listening to this, just take a second. Don't try to sit up perfectly straight, and definitely don't suck your stomach in. Just bring your attention to the space roughly 2 inches behind your belly button. Just notice that space. Hold your focus there while you take a normal breath.
It's very subtle.
Yeah, what we're doing here is basically placing a mental bookmark. It's a single, tiny point of focus that keeps the body globally organized without requiring us to micromanage every single joint.
And neurologically, when you focus on a minimal point like the space behind the navel, you are occupying the brain's executive functioning just enough to be useful.
Just giving it something to chew on.
Right. By giving the prefrontal cortex a simple, low-effort job, you stop it from sending out these brace for impact or fix everything signals to the superficial muscles. It provides the nervous system with just enough of an orienting signal to preserve global organization, giving all that unnecessary effort permission to basically melt away.
It functions like a lighthouse. You don't need to string lights across the entire ocean to know where you are. You just need that one reliable reference point to navigate by.
A lighthouse is a great way to think about it.
And we desperately need that navigation because, as we said, the body's condition changes every single day.
The variables are endless. I mean, think about how much sleep you got, your emotional state, ambient temperature, physical activity, muscle soreness, general fatigue.
Yeah, it all adds up.
Every single one of those elements alters your internal environment. Body control is never about finding one perfect geometric posture and freezing yourself in that position forever. It's an act of continuous dynamic tuning.
Which introduces, I think, the most illuminating metaphor of this entire discussion, the old analog radio.
Yes. Think of an old radio dial. The desired signal, the efficient, deeply supported, effortless organization of your physical body. It exists. It is always broadcasting. But on an old radio, static is always present.
Always. But here's the trick. The noise isn't static, like in the sense of being unchanging. It continuously changes. You wake up with a stiff neck from sleeping weirdly. That is new noise. Your energy crashes at 3 p.m. That's noise. You start shallow breathing because you're stressed about an incoming email. That is also noise.
It's all noise.
The task is not to find the one perfect position on the dial and superglue the knob in place. The task is to continually retune the system as those conditions evolve throughout the day.
And noise is basically anything that consumes your attentional resources or disrupts the environment. Unnecessary muscular tension is noise. Scattered attention, excessive ruminating thoughts, or even hyperfixating on your physical sensations, all of that acts as internal static.
And I imagine the louder the internal static becomes, the harder it is for the brain to detect and implement those subtle, efficient organizational changes.
Oh, absolutely. It drowns out the signal completely.
So how do you actually know when you have tuned into the signal through all that static? The recommendation in the notes here is to use comfort as the practical tuning dial. But we need to be incredibly precise about what comfort means.
We really do.
Because we aren't trying to find whatever slouched position on the couch feels the laziest.
Right. Comfort does not equal absolute truth, and it certainly does not mean purely seeking pleasure. It's a stable reference point in a highly volatile system.
Okay, so what does comfort look like in this context?
In this context, comfort refers to an integrated condition. Your breathing is natural and unforced. Unnecessary tension has dropped away. You feel structurally supported by your skeleton, and there's this overall sense of whole-body coherence. Using that specific baseline of comfort as a reference keeps you from drifting into excessive, forced effort.
Got it. So we use comfort to tune the dial, but we don't just worship the comfort itself.
Right.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. If comfort is the tuning reference, what happens when the noise isn't just physical fatigue from a bad night's sleep? What happens when the noise is our own stubborn mindset? Like, what if we firmly believe we're perfectly tuned into the music, but we have actually just gotten incredibly used to listening to static?
Now we are hitting on the most profound challenge in this entire framework. Cognition itself, your thoughts, your deeply held beliefs, your interpretations of what good posture is fundamentally part of your internal environment.
And that creates a massive, invisible cognitive blind spot.
It does.
Because it's incredibly easy to fix a physical mistake if you know it's a mistake. If I notice I'm slouching heavily over my keyboard, I can just use an anchor and adjust. But what if I'm doing something incredibly dysfunctional, like aggressively jutting my chest out and arching my lower back, and I am entirely convinced that this is the correct way to stand up straight?
That's the trap. Once a cognitive interpretation is accepted by your brain as the right way, it becomes invisible to your conscious awareness.
Invisible, wow.
You no longer experience that arched back as a bias or as an exhausting tension. You simply experience it as normal.
So if my personal baseline of normal is actually packed full of internal noise, structural bracing, and tension, but I believe I am doing the right thing, trying harder to be correct is actually making the dysfunction worse.
This is exactly where so many traditional training methods fail. Because of neuroplasticity, the brain's tendency to wire together neurons that fire together, your brain is constantly seeking efficiency by deeply reinforcing the patterns you use most often.
Right, it's just trying to help.
Exactly. But if your underlying cognitive pattern is flawed, continuing to aggressively practice that pattern simply reinforces the faulty wiring.
So I'm stuck in a loop. I can't see the mistake because my brain has normalized the static. So how do I fix a problem my brain refuses to acknowledge even exists?
The solution is a radical departure from traditional fitness advice. You must engage in less doing. You must temporarily stop active intervention altogether.
Just have to stop trying to fix myself.
Yes, it's not abandoning your practice. It's recognizing that your active fixing is driven by a flawed cognitive blueprint, making your fixing the actual source of the noise.
That is mind-blowing.
To break that highly reinforced neural wire, you cannot just try to force a new pattern over the old one. You have to literally starve the old pattern of attention. By stepping back and applying that skill of doing nothing, you cease active intervention.
You just pause.
This creates a neurological pause, allowing those fixed, rigid cognitive patterns to loosen up. You are giving both your physical body and your sensory perception the vital space needed to habituate to a different baseline without your conscious mind micromanaging the process.
You basically have to let go of your deeply ingrained idea of what is right before your body can actually organize itself efficiently.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it really changes how we view effort.
It really brings everything on a circle. True body control isn't just flexing a muscle harder than the next guy. It is the joint, ongoing tuning of your physical organization, your sensory perception, your attention, your breathing, and your cognitive biases. You subtly tweak the environment, you observe the result through your anchor, you make a microscopic adjustment, and you observe again.
And through those repeated cycles of tuning and observing, the nervous system is finally allowed to adopt those highly efficient, deeply structural movement strategies.
And that's when you feel it.
Yes. When that integration happens, you don't feel like you are forcefully activating anything. You feel effortless support. You feel naturally relaxed while standing tall. The deep muscles finally emerge, perfectly executing the job they were designed for.
So let's bring this right back into your daily life. The next time you're sitting at your desk, or you're prepping for a stressful meeting, or you're on that yoga mat and someone tells you to engage your core, or you just catch yourself unconsciously holding your breath and tensing your shoulders, remember the old radio.
Remember the static.
Stop trying to manually force the signal. Stop trying to micromanage your anatomy. Zoom out. Observe the static in your system. Find a minimal anchor. Just gently notice the space behind your navel and tune the environment. Trust your nervous system to handle the complexity.
It represents a profound shift from a mindset of physical domination to a mindset of environmental cultivation.
It really does. And we want to leave you with one final thought to mull over today, something that builds on this biology but takes it a step further into our daily lives.
I love this part.
If deep, unbreakable physical stability and strength emerge not from forced conscious effort, but from organizing our internal environment and deliberately loosening our rigid cognitive biases, well, could this exact same blueprint apply to our psychological resilience?
It's a huge question.
Think about it. Perhaps emotional strength isn't something you forcefully use or engage on command either. Maybe true mental toughness naturally emerges when you clear out the cognitive noise, stop obsessively overmanaging your thoughts, and just allow your mind the quiet space to organize itself. Think about that the next time someone tells you to just power through a difficult situation. Until next time, keep diving deep.